Hey, good afternoon, everybody. This is Jim Hoffman,
And I'm Josh Knapp.
and here we are again for an EMS Office Hours live podcast.
Pre-disastrous snowstorm.
Yeah, you're in for a big one, right?
Anybody on the East Coast,
Well,
get off the roads by
on the East
5.
Coast. I'm
Hey,
on the East
listen,
Coast. I'm getting
it's
nothing.
easy. What?
I'm on the East Coast. I'm not getting anything.
You're going to get rained. They
Yeah,
said from
I'm getting
Georgia,
rain.
all the way to Maine.
I know. I see all kinds of stuff. Did you get all your bread and your milk?
um, uh, Made pancakes already.
Oh, okay. All right. Well, guys, thanks for joining us for a live show. Be sure to like this real quick as we're going through so we know you guys are here, you're engaged, listening. Leave us a comment as well if you have a comment about what we are speaking about and talking about today. So, what I wanted to talk about, Josh, today, one of the things anyway, see how long we can kind of jab about it, but I've been doing the upgrades for the new protocols in New York City, right?
Oh, Lord. Really?
So
You're doing that now?
it's quite the nightmare trying to update the exams and the audios and the videos and all that good stuff that go with that. But one thing that kind of struck me, and I kind of titled this show about not everything being negative in
Mm,
EMS. And the reason why I wanted to title it that, I started looking at the protocols, right? And as you know,
For the first time in 22 years.
yeah. Well, as you know, the protocol, what struck me about it is that you've got that one line in every protocol that says ABCs and monitor vital signs, ABCs and vital signs, right?
Yep.
Who has a ring like that anymore?
Old guys.
Jesus. So I just thought it was, I started thinking about that, right? It's a short little phrase, right? 3 words, 4 words, but so much encompasses that phrase, right? The ABCs, everything that's involved with assessing the and managing the patient's airway, breathing, and circulation, right? And then
Hmm.
vital signs. So much is involved with vital signs between blood pressure, heart rate, respiratory rate, uh, pulse oximetry, even blood glucose, evaluation, and how we are. You see that as a quick one-liner in the protocol.
Yep.
You know what I mean? But it means so much, and I just kind of wanted to, when I say not negative in EMS, the positive part of that I want to kind of address is that it takes a lot for us to know that, and we should really take the credit that is due, for having to understand and know everything with that. Just for as an example, that one short little phrase, right? Because when we're doing everything else that we do out in the field, when we do um, practical skills, right? You always get that thing. You kind of regurgitate it, you know.
Right. Well, think of every skill station. The
Yeah,
first thing that somebody looks at you and says, BSI scene safety.
yeah, yeah,
What I mean, you know, and then they just plunge right in,
yeah.
and it's like, and you get some of the people who look. And I don't want to you wanted to turn this into a positive thing, so I'm still listening
Well, the reason
because
why,
we usually
well,
jump over.
yeah, what I'm trying to point out is that even that the BSI scene safety kind of blanket statement that gets made on every skill station, right? There's
Hmm.
a lot that is involved just with that in real life, you know. It's not just a matter of walking into a house and saying, "Oh, the scene is safe." There's a lot of stuff you're doing when you first on your way to a call, when you get on the call, well, while you're on the call, when you're moving the patient from the house to the stretcher, and I mean, from the house to the ambulance, and there's so much that's involved with these short phrases, and I think when you're new in EMS, you kind of pick up on the importance of those things much more than when you've got some time in EMS. Because once you got time in EMS, right, that stuff starts coming natural to you. Not
Right.
as just on an exam, on a skill sheet or on an exam, but every day in the field. Your ABCs and vital signs, as a provider, you're out in the field for a while and you're getting to know stuff. You're automatically, just as you're making patient contact, you're evaluating in your mind the patient's airway, their breathing. You're already looking at that without doing like the standard kind of corny steps they make you do in school, right? You're actually kind of in your mind already evaluating that on that patient already, right? As somebody new, you're not really that skilled at that just yet.
Right.
Okay. Same thing with BSI, with scene safety and stuff like that. In the beginning, you know, your thought process is, well, is there any guns laying around or knives? But when you become an experienced provider, there's a lot more that you're looking at when it comes to the scene safety and ongoing assessment of the scene, and even the ongoing assessment of ABCs and vital signs.
Okay.
And again, I feel like the positive part of it and the positive take that I'm trying to kind of bring out today is just the fact that we need to, in a lot of ways, take credit for that, right? Because if you give a protocol sheet to the average Joe and they're looking at that protocol sheet, they have no idea what a BSI scene safety entails or what ABC's vital signs entail, right? But we know it, and as you get into EMS and as you're a provider for a while, that just starts coming second nature to you. You know,
Okay. So let me interject. So I'm listening, and I agree with what you're saying here. But you started off the podcast with the idea you wanted to go on a positive swing, and everything I'm listening to you is something that we generally criticize. We go and say, yeah, the new guy may be paying attention to all the items on the checklist, but he doesn't know where these items fit, or some other
well,
critique
sure.
on how we take in this information, what experience does to this information, what experience does to our eye on, when we're on the scene. I mean, I was just smiling to myself. I was thinking, we're about to hit a snowstorm, and there's a lot to be said for the positivity of what a snowstorm and how a snowstorm changes some of our response in EMS. I mean, I've had beautiful, no hitter tours where we just watched the snowfall, and then a little bit, maybe a rough ride going home because the streets aren't completely plowed and you got to pick your way. And then, of course, that's marred by the aspect of, okay, now I'm going to have to deal with freaking snow and slush for the next 2 weeks. And what's the first thing you like to do when you before you step in a big snowy pile? Is you check for dog.
Yeah.
I mean, who in EMS hasn't worked in a snowstorm or hasn't worked in the days after a snowstorm and come across those wonderful little surprises that are
Yeah.
buried deep in
Yeah.
the white fluff
Well,
or the yellow gray fluff.
what you had
But
mentioned, which was funny, you're talking about like the newer people who, like you said, they know that they have to acknowledge, BSI, acknowledge scene safety, acknowledge ABCs, but they're not as attuned to it as more experienced providers, right? And that's why I say we have to really take credit for the knowledge that we build in this profession,
right,
because we have access to this experience, to this knowledge base, to what we go through on a daily basis that most people will never get to do, and in my opinion, a lot of times don't have the the privilege to do, the privilege to be able to know what those things mean and how much they mean to patients we encounter and how much they mean to the outcome of what we do every day. You know, um,
Hmm.
anybody can just look at a protocol sheet and say, go through, the steps and say, oh, ABCs. But if you stop right there and say, wow, that little phrase means so much. And if you look at any of that stuff, man, you look at, you know, any of the protocols, any of the skill sheets that we do, you know, just knowing what each step really means versus what it's just saying in a sentence. You know what I mean? Like one sentence
A
can
hundred percent.
one sentence, it's like, start an IV, start an intravenous of, 0.9% normal saline. That, in a sentence, it doesn't sound like much, but when you think about everything that goes along with that, we have to, I think, put the positive, I think, spin on that element of all of the knowledge and skills that we gain as we're in class, as we move on to working on the ambulance, as we get experience, and as we kind of recognize that, you know, looking like me myself, looking back now, right? Any of those skills, sure, I just in my mind, and when you're on the street and you're doing it, you breeze through it. As somebody
Right.
new, every step means so much more than it does to somebody who's been doing it,
Well,
3, 4, 5,
it's the
10 years.
it's the unknown, isn't it? It's the unknown that's framing all those steps. When you're brand new and you're reading through the protocols, you're like, some of the steps you might understand, some of the steps you might not have learned yet,
Right,
or you've never seen or gotten to apply them. I mean, it's like when you drop your first tube in the field. It boy, that's different from the mannequin
sure,
or the controlled, and I don't, I'm hoping it works similar, in other states. In New York State, part of your progression as a paramedic, when you're doing intubation, you have to do it in a controlled environment, which is usually a teaching hospital where you're in the emergency, not the emergency room, you're in the operating room with a anesthesiologist and the surgeon, and they're all waiting on you, and the anesthesiologist is guiding you through dropping your first tube, or inserting your first tube in a real human being,
right,
after all the practice and all the certification and all the sign-offs you get. And that is, one of the things, though, I think that counters that for when you're new, is the aspect of tunnel vision. You get so focused on the act itself or the idea itself, that you exclude all other things. Yet now you're reading through the protocols as now an experienced medic, and you can actually go back in your head. It's like, if they're cold, sweaty, maybe a little AMS, you want to rule out, hypoglycemia. You want to drop a line. You want to get out the dextrose, and you want to administer it because you feel it's hypoglycemia, and your glucose meter says 22, and then all of a sudden the person's talking to you again. And that's the experience that goes behind that protocol. So the next time you read that protocol, you're also attaching it to, oh yeah, I gotta assess my patient, I gotta do a glucometer reading, I gotta start a line, blah 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 blah. But you're thinking about the experience you had where you did all of that already. So
right.
now those lines in the protocol, they fall together and they make sense.
Yeah, yeah.
And I
And it's
think it's
not,
a
like you said, it's when you're doing it in class and you're doing it, through your clinicals, things like that. I remember big thing was the childbirth, right? In fact, it's like you're reading the protocol, you're reading the steps, and you're like, this doesn't sound so hard. The baby comes out and you warm it up, and But
Right.
then you do it for real in real life, you're like, okay, this is nothing like the skill sheet and nothing like, the protocol. But yet in your mind, you're still trying to hit and remember the things that have to go on, suctioning and evaluating and APGAR and understanding the respiratory rates and the heart rates and when you might have to do some more interventions if need be. Um,
Hmm.
and again, that's something that comes, like you said, fear of the kind of the unknown, with that, you know, and
Right.
and I think and along with that, when you think about the other training that you have, and then the other experience that you have, you're looking at let's say the childbirth, protocol, you can glance over the BLS, ABCs, vital signs, and get down all Okay, I get that all I get. Let's get down to the part where the baby's coming out.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. So next thing you know, you're on step number 12 because you already know 1 through 11. You've been doing 1 through 11 on every patient.
So, could you say the positive message that you want to give with this, with this overlook, this discussion, is to the new guy who's looking down that list and saying, "Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God, do I get one in front of two? What happens?" Or not
A
even
lot of
thinking that. Remember
yeah,
one,
exactly.
but don't give up hope. Get stiff upper lip, because experience will teach you the rest of the way.
Well, yeah, I mean, I think that's part of it. I think that the not to let things like the stress and the unknown hinder your confidence, right?
Hmm.
Because with that experience and with doing it, your confidence will build, and you'll be more experienced with it. And again, take that confidence, even if you're just starting out, with the knowledge of there's a lot of stuff we have to know in EMS as EMS providers and professionals that we need to, take that sort of self credit for, that we're doing a pretty amazing job out there that most people wouldn't have the first clue on how to even begin when they come across somebody who's in need because they're in some sort of an emergency, you know, and that us knowing just simple lines like seeing safety and ABCs and vital signs, that alone is way more than the average person walking down the street is going to know.
Well, yeah, I mean, yeah, and that will fall back into that sort of where you were intimating before, is that how lucky are we?
Right.
How lucky are we to get to do this job? When I first started in EMS, I have to tell you, I gave up a occupation that paid literally 5 times what my entry salary was, my entry pay was when I got into EMS, and I couldn't be happier. I was like a kid in a candy shop, you know. Yeah, I had some savings because I wasn't wearing a suit and tie every day. I didn't have to worry about dry cleaning. I wasn't, I did have to cut down some of my restaurant expenditures, but how lucky was I? I
Yeah.
mean, I got to go where the public wasn't allowed. I got to get onto the inside of the things that were happening in my city, my community.
Yep.
And but I didn't, like every FNG, I did not recognize some of the gravity of what I was learning at the time. It's like when when you're, and some of the things that they don't teach you, like empathy.
Hmm.
We talk about it, but until you sit in the back of the bus and you really have exhausted you, there's nothing that you can do as a practitioner other than hold your patient's hand and be steady for them and reassure them and take care of them. And that involves not giving oxygen, not starting an IV, just showing some compassion, showing that you're that you understand their fear and that you're going to be with them for this aspect of their emergency. I mean,
Yeah.
what a privilege that is.
Again, and again, that's why I say when I titled this that it's not all negative. You can sit there, you can complain about pay, you can complain about staffing, you can complain about people abusing the system, and nurses in the ER and all that good stuff. But if you think about it, it's not all negative. And I see people, um, and like you had just mentioned, talking about leaving a job that was paying more money. I see people all the time that are saying, "Hey, I'm leaving this career and I want to be an EMT or a paramedic. I'm nervous because I'm a little older. What should I do?" And I think it's like you said, for those people, it's exciting, right? Because now they're going to get into something maybe they've always wanted to do. They're going to get into something that they're going to see the kind of the inner workings of things. And I was like that as well when I first started. I was making more money working in the city than I would have been as an EMT. And I just remember being on the street in New York, and there was a car accident, and seeing the FDNY ambulance pull up, and saying to myself, "Man, these guys like that we're just watching them operate." And I was like, "Man, they know what the hell they're doing. They know exactly
Hmm.
what to do." Like I looked at that car wreck and I was like, I wouldn't know what the first thing, where to even begin to start, you know.
Right.
And I just sat there and watched them, and and that was the one thing that really motivated me to start becoming an EMT. Was seeing that wreck and standing there on the sidelines as, an observer, right? And just watching them operate, watching the fire department come on scene and watching them work together on, on the scene with patients, and, the wreck and all that stuff. And I remember, like, I can remember even how it was even to this day, how when they were winding up stuff and the patient was out of the car in the ambulance, and I still stood there and I just watched the fireman putting the sand down for the leaks that were on the road, and then the tow truck coming, and just watching the whole thing and saying to myself,
The
this is
process.
something, right, the process, and saying to myself, this is something that I wanted to be a part of, you know.
Hmm.
And I remember I had a glimmer of that when I was in the military, and seeing the medics work in the military, and saying to myself at that time that these guys like knew what they were doing. They had the knowledge of what they were doing. So just to go back again and talking about not being negative, the fact that we know that information, right? We know everything in a protocol, in a skill sheet, in a algorithm on how to treat patients. You can hand that to anybody on the street, and they don't necessarily know what the hell any of it means. You
Right.
know,
Yep.
and I think we need to really, take that positive step, and just to kind of acknowledge that we are doing something pretty special out there, and that we are, very privileged to do the things that we do. And, at least that way, when we do that, then we can go back and bitch about not getting paid enough. There's always room for that.
I, I I think there's always room for that, and that should never be put on the sidelines, because I
Right.
think that's a
Right.
very important aspect. I
Yeah.
mean, that draws down to all the other aspects of how special is the work that we do, versus with the idea of how important is it, and how much you want somebody who's not looking at the list and saying, okay, I've done one, now do two, and get ready for three,
Yeah.
instead of some guy can walk in and sort of say, hey, this doesn't look right, or that doesn't look right, or you know what, I don't think it's hypoglycemia, I think you're having a stroke, and we got to alert these people, and we got to put these things in. And remember, back in the day, before you gave notification for those sort of things, they weren't quite recognized, but you said, you know what, I know we have an MRI, I know this is possibly a stroke, I know what my
Yeah.
hospital's protocols are, and you call them up, you give the ER ring, and you say,
Yeah. You broke up there, Josh. Well, the funny thing is, Josh's video screwed up a little bit there, but it's funny. He talks about when the notifications weren't. You didn't get notifications for a lot of things we do now. I remember calling the dispatcher and saying, "Can you give a note to this hospital? We're bringing it," and they would say, "We don't." The dispatcher would refuse to do it. We don't give it for that. We don't do it for that. I'm too busy for that.
Right,
Nowadays, you're giving notifications for septic patients. It's like
right,
it's
right.
way, way different. And again, going back to being positive, right? Think about all of that knowledge and all the experience and how far that we've come, in EMS, that this stuff really matters. So I just wanted to kind of mention that, a little bit, guys. Uh, I see a bunch of people watching us live. I appreciate that. Do me a favor, hit that like button so that I know you are paying attention, and leave me a comment as well. I see GC Rossau put in there, but he's coming in from South Africa, so I'm sure it's way different there on patient care and stuff in a lot of ways. But I bet the ABCs are still at the top of that list, even in South Africa. You know. Um, so Josh, I don't want to go on too long. Been going for about, I don't know, about a half hour here. So, um, is there anything else you wanna hit on before we wrap up, or something else you want to kind of touch on at all?
Um, you know,
I was gonna talk about the
just
EMTs are getting robbed in New York left and right, but that's a whole nother thing. I haven't read enough about it, about it to really comment enough. But I saw some of the EMTs getting robbed. I think
yeah,
of
it's
Colorado and
it's
stuff. So going back to that scene safety, gotta keep that
third
in mind.
third
It's
one in a
rare.
row. Third
Yeah,
one in a row, and your job starts when you get the radio call that you're going to a job. Right?
yeah.
Start thinking about where you're going, what the area is, what the
Everything, the
what
protocol. You
everything.
think about you
Right.
think about the job type you're being dispatched to, the protocol that might be under versus some of the differentials that might be there as well, right? Because,
Hmm.
like you said, the diabetic patient, you might come in as a diabetic, and then you might get there and assess, and it might be a stroke, right?
Right.
So just
Right.
some things that you have to kind of you know prepare for, and like you said, the job starts when you take the call, and that's the scene safety. That's thinking about what kind of patients you're going to have, how many patients, all this stuff. We know it already, right? We've done it. It's all part of the skill sheets, and thinking about how many patients, how many resources you need, all that good stuff. It ties in. But again, when you have experience and when you've been doing it for a while, it comes so much more natural than when you're brand new. But still, the knowledge that's there is, I think, it's a privilege for us to have that knowledge, and a privilege for us to implement it and share it with other people.
Just keep in mind that the knowledge will come, the experience will come, but and you'll put it all together. But this job is not a checklist.
No.
So keep an eye. Even if the gray-haired guy in the group has a bit of a bad attitude because he's been underpaid for 20
Right.
years,
And no,
he still has those 20 years of experience and knows when to walk in, knows to check the stairs when he's going up because he's probably going to have to come down those same stairs with
yeah,
another 200 pounds on his back. Keep those things in mind
yeah,
and be
absolutely.
safe out there in this snowstorm today. It is no joke.
Yeah, if you're on the East Coast, like you mentioned earlier, guys, you're getting a lot of snow apparently and ice, so just be safe out there. Um, I've driven in that many, many times in the ambulance, slid into intersections, and almost slid off a cliff one time when I worked upstate New York. That was good times.
Fun.
You know, I actually posted on Facebook, and the Facebook friend that I have about it. Um, they were talking about the snow coming up, and I remembered we left the scene of a DOA, and we're going, and it was kind of a little bit of a downhill, but it was all ice and this narrow road, and on one side was almost a cliff that went down into woods, and the other side was the same exact thing, and the ambulance was just barely wide enough, narrow enough to get down the road, and we started losing control, and I just laughed at myself because I remember that he broke his fingernail trying to keep the ambulance
Oh my God.
on the road. You know, my fingernail busted because he was hitting the steering wheel so hard, trying to keep control of the vehicle. You know, and I think I laughed more because it was nervous laughter that I was just happy we didn't end up upside down. You know, in the woods,
Right.
just versus him breaking his fingernail. So,
Yeah.
all right, we'll end it there, Josh. I know I have it
Sounds
in
good.
I have my little thing here about freeemsbook.com. Go there. You can get yourself a free copy of this.
It's an excellent, excellent study guide. Really, even if you've been
Nice.
through this like for
It's
years
good
at a
to
time.
review. It's good to review. It's got a lot of high points that you're going to see on exams quite often. And as we all know, EMS is a constant testing environment. So having this is in your toolbox will definitely, I think, help you out. So go to freeemsbook.com and see how you can get yourself a free copy of that.
I'd like to mention the URL at the bottom of my screen, oxygenwrench.com or o2wrench.com. It's the want new oxygen wrench. If you're
Right.
still using a tank that requires a wrench, this is the wrench for you.
Right.
And I want to thank Jim to finally figuring out how my shopping cart works and fixing it, because now you don't get overcharged for shipping.
Exactly.
You know, so it's almost like it's on sale.
That's true.
Get to o2wrench.com and check one out today.
Exactly. Yep. One of the best friends. Like I have a yellow one here, but I think I got a lot of other colors. So
it's the Littman of oxygen wrenches. I got told by a very big distributor on the East Coast.
Yeah.
He said, "This wrench is great. You know what this is? It's like how Littman is to stethoscopes. This thing is to oxygen wrenches. So if you need one,
we got to put it on the website.
Well, I'll have to talk to the administrator about that.
Yeah, see if you can get it on there. All right, we're gonna end it there. Josh, as always, I really appreciate you joining me. Anyone any comments, questions, put them in the comments right here on Facebook or on YouTube. But don't be like Triple B was on YouTube and make a nasty comment, because then I got to go in there. I got to delete the comment.
Don't make us work, man.
It make me work harder than I have to. All right, so don't come in here and troll. I mean, Triple B, your trolling skills are commendable.
Right.
Don't do stuff like that, because I just have to go. It take time out of my day, and I got to go. I got to erase the negative comment, the big pain in the ass. And I'm not getting millions of views with this video, so you're not going to get that many people seeing your shit.
Hey,
so don't bother.
Jim, we're grizzled old medics. Don't piss us off, or we'll get rid of you and make it look like an accident. We know how to document.
Exactly. Documentation is key.
Yes, absolutely.
Right. All right. That's it, everyone. As always, I'm Jim Hoffman.